Hello. It's supposed to be 1 or 2 degrees outside tonight. Maybe at the highest, 5. And I had foresight, thank God. I turned the dial of the heat last night before leaving for a long drive on potential ice, although I didn't see any, although there was a moment that was two all those in a sentence. I don't know where to put the commas. But there was a moment as I was going 60 miles per hour, I felt through my steering wheel and the dashboard the front tires. And back through the front tires, I felt the back. Back through the front tires, I felt the back tires. And altogether, I felt nothing, which is to say, the non-resistance of slick ice. And it came as the car's not going anywhere except straight ahead, no matter what I do. Now, it wasn't that slow. A duration. All of that relevance realization was in a split second. And then I went past the little island of ice to Barnes & Noble, because I didn't want to spend much more time on the road until a sufficient number of cars, at least in my own mind, had passed over the road, breaking the ice into slush. And there, not expecting to find it, I found another John Truby book, The Anatomy of Genres. How story forms explain the way the world works. How do I convey my excitement to you through this frame about the introduction of this book to my hand? And especially there on the bookshelf, third shelf down, and it could have slipped into somebody else's hands. But no, I pried it out between two other reference books and took it home with me. This writer has generous gaps between his books. The first one, The Anatomy of Story, I bought 2 copies of, one when I was living in California, and the second also in California, which makes a third that I bought in South Dakota. And this is out today. I won't read any caption from the middle because perhaps you will buy it. And there's a reason for how he structures his chapters. One follows another. But I will read the copy on the back, the first paragraph. And this will set us going, get us going, however you want to define the point of departure. Most people think genres are simply categories on Netflix or Amazon that provide a helpful guide to making entertainment choices. Most people are wrong. Genre stories aren't just a small subset of the films, books, TV shows, and video games that people consume. The storytelling game is won by mastering genres. They are the all-stars of the entertainment world, making up the vast majority of popular stories worldwide. Knowing how to write genres is the most superlative expression here. They want us to pay attention. The most important skill in the storytelling industry. And the real secret of genres is that each one expresses a unique philosophy of how to live a good life, which is what readers and audiences really hunger for. Is this true? Well, as I was sitting on the tiered platform of the Starbucks in, as it were, what had been slid into the back corner of this warehouse bookstore, a Starbucks. To the left of the writing reference section, which was also to the left of all the board games and trading cards, but to the left of those trading cards, Starbucks and the tiered platform and the tables in a semicircular formation. I sat and read that paragraph and thought to myself, the verb at the end, or the prepositional verb, I don't know the grammatical name or the name of the grammatical construction, hunger for. My mind went to the first beatitude, where Jesus says, blessed, maybe it's not the first, it's one in the list. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And as I was turning this proposition over in my mind, it occurred to me, one, that sentence is a hypothetical statement or a hypothesis. To wit, if you hunger and thirst for righteousness, then you shall be satisfied, or you will be satisfied. And the radical procedure here, the paradigm shift of wow, this will sound pedantic. My apologies. The conceptuality of righteousness is in the verb choice, hunger and thirst for, whatever that name for the grammatical construction is. And so we should ask ourselves, not what is righteousness? What is a cup of tea? These things have valences, don't we know? A cup of tea, yes, it's an object, it's a noun, but it also has a warmth to it, or a lack thereof, which also is felt. Ah, the cold tea, if only. Well, it's something as simple and ordinary as a cup of tea has at least two valences, then surely righteousness has more. And certainly such a noun, an object that has a tiered history, not a tiered history, although it has that too, but a tiered history, a traditional one. In fact, a tradition that argues with a tradition that is siding with the tradition that hasn't heard about that other tradition yet. Such an one. This object. Probably more valences than all the rays of the sun hitherto from its original conception, from its conception. So rather than try to tease out a metaphysics of the Beatitudes or a metaphysical beatitude, which might give me a hernia, why don't we simply look at the simple word hunger and thirst in the radical juxtaposition, in the weird turn of phrase, hunger and thirst for righteousness? Because not what is the quantity is here measured, but what is the quality? That is what is being affected by the word choice. not the quantity. There is nothing wrong with quantity. Every time I sip the cup of tea, it is losing quantity. But the quality of its being warm, of its being fresh, of its being something I made specifically for this video, for this frame, as something I looked forward to while I was gliding across the island of ice at 60 miles per hour before I promptly slowed down after the fact. This termination of my day, this point of departure, or would it be point for departure from where I was, it has so many more ends to it than meets the eye. And all those ends, or almost all those ends, are knotted firmly in or with the quality, which is not a quality of the tea leaf per se. And it's not the quality of the cup of tea as an event, although it is that too. And it certainly is the tea leaves with the event that I tried to describe to you, but also more and more irrelevant and relevant things on top of that. Non-resisting each other, unresisting the whole. I'm starting to sound Hegelian, which, again, teasing this book a little, teasing out of this book a structure, if you will. He mentions Hegel by name. Maybe I can find where he does, so. No, I will paraphrase. He gives the picture of a ladder, and he says, in order to reach the fifth, you must have reached the fourth, which is to say you put your hand on the third beforehand, went on the fourth, and that tells me at least your feet were on the second. And the ladder starts with the first. So in the fifth rung, you have all four beforehand antecedently exposed, not destroyed. In the same way with quantity and quality, the more quality we experience, the less quantity seems to matter, but a deeper understanding will reveal that the quantity is not erased in its disappearance. Why does this matter? Well, not everything has to be practical. The first sentence of this book: most people think genres are simply categories on Netflix or Amazon that provide a helpful guide to making entertainment choices. If you take some of the adjectives out of that sentence, you have genres are categories that provide a guide. So genres are categories that guide. Make the noun a verb. Who? Us. The modern postmoderns. Genres are categories that provide guides to guide us modern postmoderns to making choices. Peterson calls this an ethic. He has repeated himself. Ethic, ethic, ethic. A frame is an ethical worldview from a point of departure in action that manifests the underlying principle or suite of principles that generate rules like the waves from a wake. And this finds us wanting. And this finds us, some of us, seething. And this finds us, most of us, perplexed. Genres are categories that provide a helpful guide to making choices. But then he goes on. Knowing how to write genres is the most important skill. Each one expresses a unique philosophy of how to live a good life. Notice the repetition of the word how. Somewhere in this book, he talks about stories as unique vessels for processing information and distributing the information across guidelines. And the recapitulation of the information in a self or a monument or a catchphrase is a recapitulation of the ethic, of the frame, of the disposition, of the departure from the unexpressed. And someone could be paranoid and think this is coming from all directions, and they inhabit, adopt, and develop a system that explains not away, but the encroaching danger from all sides at the center of it all. But they would be missing the metanoia, the repentance piece. Metanoia, the Greek word for repentance, or the Latin word repentance being the meaning of the Greek word metanoia. I don't know. I said metanoia, but then I heard someone closer to Greek ancestry say metanoia. So I will oscillate between the two as if on slick ice, verbal slick ice. But in either case, whether repenting or metanoia, we're referring to the action of turning, by which, of course, we don't mean a spinning top. We don't mean the mind-body dualism post-Descartes of unscrewing the mind from the body and embodiment in a Piagetian sense to place the screw in some jar with other screws. These are minds in a hive as some kind of unasked for, non-compensated think tank of dispossessed youth or dispossessed middle-aged people. This is not, hopefully not, what's waiting for us as we go deeper into the 21st century, this mind-body dualism. uncorking. No. And that's one of the reasons why in this book, he does the Joseph Campbell thing where Mr. Truby says that these genres cannot be isolated anymore. To oscillate to Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, which, by the way, he was writing as Napoleon was sitting on his horse, no ice beneath, some dirt, I'm sure, and blades of grass, trotting to wherever Hegel was at the time, Prussia, Berlin, I don't know where he was. But Napoleon was invading wherever it was, because he was, as far as I understand through Wikipedia, invading almost everywhere while he was invading. So this book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, when it says things like reason, nation, consciousness, it has the taste in the air of an embodied revolutionary, Napoleon and his followers. This book, The Anatomy of Genres, of course, is a product of its time. But we're in this time, so it's hard, if not impossible, to see it from far away. But one of the things Truby says is that with technology augmenting, not to the nano scale, but to the irises, virtual reality, matrix in the app of the phone, the things down the pipeline, etc. He says that one thing which will epistemologically distinguish the future, nobody knows the future, but in the story he tells, the meta story he tells of why all these genres are connected, I kept thinking of Jonathan Peugeot as I was reading the beginning and end of this book. But at any rate, he says that, Truby says, one of the things that will distinguish the epistemology of the future, the justification of truth claims, the synthetic posteriori experience, the cooked from the raw, the way we make sense to ourselves and to our friends, is by taking the isolated genres and baking them together. Some will be 4, some will be 3, some will have all 14 genres. And of course, the permutation of this combination will firecracker out even more genres. Well, is that an explosion of quantity or quality, or both? How much quantity do we need before we begin to see the crust of the too much and the soft muffin center of the just right for quality? When can we let something be imperfect? Because I think one of the things that will happen as technology meets storytelling for this kind of synthetic posteriori experience that people might buy into is, well, I want it to look real. I want it to feel real. I want it to be quick and faster than what's required for me to get up in the morning and prepare to leave the house. I want to just, in my avatar, go. But that's a strange verb, go. All the things it skates over, glides over, flies over. or walks through that we have lost the mothballs of relevance in, and so we simply say, they went. It will be hard to quantify the quality of that embodiedness in the future. When technology and storytelling, when the engineer and the rhapsode see one another's eyes from across the flame at the common campfire, it will be hard to see what they see in each other. Or maybe not. I was heartened by this book, by finding this book, by knowing that he's still writing, John Truby. And so I see this video as an interlude between more spelunking in the cave of Christos Ioneros and his Person and Eros book, and the return to shore for a while to put more oxygen in the tank for deeper dives into Professor Ioneros's ontology. And that's all. Forgive me for my rambling structure. I'm going to finish this cup of tea and not read any more of that book tonight. I hope where you are, it's warm or not too cold. Take care.